Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. Welcome to the audience. We appreciate you joining us today in another episode of what I really consider probably one of the few podcasts that focus on those special, unique individuals that get involved with some really interesting stuff. And Mitchell has got this fascinating concept, and I'm so looking forward to this episode. And we're going to talk today about Volta XR. We're going to talk about what I think in your bio you talk about redefining the next generation of interactive entertainment. And I mean, you talk about being as a full-time technologist and a part-time musician, and we need to cover that a bit as well. Yeah. I'm passionate about the confluence of music, technology, and gaming, and that's fascinating to me. And welcome to the show, Mitchell.
Thank you for having me, Dudley. Looking forward to sharing.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, don't you want to just give us a bit of background? I mean, I can probably go through a bit more on your LinkedIn bio, but I really just want to let's unpack a bit, sort of the journey. How did you get to where you are right now, and sort of what are you doing right now that's so special and unique, and why it's so intriguing to me, anyway?
Okay, journey to how I got here, I guess, is a rather different story. I had quite a few different sort of pieces of my upbringing. I started off as a racing driver, going all the way through to, pardon me, to Formula 3. Then I sort of unfortunately left that world about 16 when sponsorship dried up due to the financial crisis. It's a very expensive sport to keep on going with, and went into the event world and built my own event management business, which I actually managed to sell. And it was sort of around that journey where when music started taking the forefront. I'd already sort of been learning piano along with a number of different instruments, but kind of going into the event space, it was seeing how music was then driving people's behaviors and how it was bringing people together. And yeah, like I said, I sold that business, went to university to study economics, where I then went to become an investment banker for all my sins. So I started off at Goldman Sachs, then JP Morgan and Barclays, all the nation's favorite banks, I guess. But, you know, all jokes aside, I think I had the learnings were incredible. It really kind of shaped what kind of came next. And, you know, both from what to do, as well as maybe not what to do in terms of company culture and things like that. But I left that world about 6-7 years ago to co-found my first tech startup, second business. And that was a business called Nez that was trying to essentially be the Google pay-per-click of the offline space. So rather than sending leads to a website and, you know, hoping they convert through a sales funnel, ultimately our job was to send footfall, actual people, to the high street. So we would send sort of customers to restaurants, bars, retail sites, and monetize those kind of conversions in store and send back the analytics to those partners. So sort of digitize the high street play. And I emphasize that because it is part of the journey to Volta, because that's actually where Alex, my co-founder, and I got acquainted. He actually moved into my apartment when I was on that journey of scaling Nez, because he was a music marketing manager in the States, moved over to the UK to do his master's in innovation, where Volta kind of started. But kind of what drew us both together was, as a cliche ex-investment banker, living in Shoreditch, my living room was undoubtedly covered with more decks, speakers, music hardware than there was living space. And Alex being in the music space himself, that kind of drew us together. But you know, it was a lovely journey because he saw me scaling Nez. I saw him building the kind of very early constructs of Volta and the prototypes. Admittedly, I told him he was bark rating mad when he came up with the first ideas of it, in terms of, to my mind, how much capital you'd need to get it off the ground and sort of the complexities of building a 3D interactive music game engine. But I'll go into that in a second. But anyways, the pandemic hit. And as I'm sure you can all imagine, a marketplace model At least with Nez, that was one side facing the high street, specifically hospitality, and the other side was facing consumers who were locked at home. We didn't really afford many. There weren't many available pivots, rather. So we had gone through 5 rounds of funding. We got the 300K MAU. We were gearing up for a sale, and our best week of revenue was the date before lockdown. We had a hockey stick curve, and it of course came collapsing down. So that was rather savage. But I'd already been advising Volta. I'd kind of seen a lot of learnings I'd had in the 5 years of scaling Nez of what I wanted to do next. Admittedly, it wasn't another early stage business because, the older you get, you need to start making ends meet. And going from, investment banking of a large salary to zero at Nez the first 18 months was difficult. It burnt, all my savings. So, the idea of a prospect of going back to another early stage startup post Nez was daunting. But it had all the ingredients I was looking for. It was my passion for music. It was a market that I could see that could be not even disrupted as the buzzword, but actually a significant amounts of growth potential within it without having to disrupt the norm. And having this idea of unshackled geographic scale. Most models and businesses I'd worked with always were some degree of locality, whether it was the UK or a city base or something like that. These kind of large scale geographic models means that, anything on the performance side becomes far more effective. But anyway, enough on background. I'll do the quick sort of cliff notes on Volta, and actually I'll continue it on as sort of as a story, as a journey, because it kind of shows a bit more what Volta is if people are uncomfortable with terminologies like the metaverse and 3D interactive and things like that. But I sort of joined, I guess, in a more full-time capacity in about April, May of 2020, and we got into Techstars, and really that's where kind of the story unfolds. And it really starts at the beginning of the pandemic. And the reason being is, I mentioned that last startup was facing retail. Well, ironically, music was probably the second hardest hit sector globally, second to retail. And the reason is, musicians typically make 80% of their income from live events. From a vocalist at a jazz bar to a DJ at a club to a producer at a festival, live is their bread and butter. And as we saw as a direct response, the likes of, dare I say it, Travis Scott and Fortnite and Lil Nas X and Roblox went off to do these virtual reality or mixed reality events in Fortnite and Roblox and the Wave and so on and so forth. And, citing Travis Scott's example, he generated 54 million views across 27 million unique users on one single stream. So undoubtedly, touring managers,
massive.
It's crazy, right? So touring managers went, holy crap, it would take us over 200 sold out Wembleys to get anywhere near that level of scale, but I can do one performance and generate the same. So the rest of the sector followed suit and tried to replicate those kind of performances, and realized very quickly that in order to make something that was actually compelling to the actual end user, the fan, the audience, you basically needed to think of it like making a movie. It's a 2-hour feature-length performance, which is all in 3D, all not interactive, all animated. And that meant significant budgets. If you weren't spending more upwards of $5 million at a top grade production studio with 6 to 12 months of lead time and a 50-person advanced film crew, what we then saw coming out was pretty poor. And that kind of shook the sector, and everyone went, right, okay, well, there's only the megastars that can do this, and everyone else, essentially, in 99.9% of the market, ended up streaming on YouTube and Twitch. And as we joke internally, watching a 40-year-old white guy DJing from his bedroom with nothing but 2 decks and a disco ball, it's pretty uninspiring. But that whole schism between the world's biggest names and everyone else just got bigger, like a story we know across a plethora of different sectors. And that's really where Volta came into solve for. So, we built a self-serve tool that any creator, no matter how big or small, could simply download for free from our website. It would allow them to create their own 3D interactive experience with a no-code drag and drop editor, a bit like a Squarespace where you could drag in palm trees and spaceships and whatnot. Everything's inherently audio reactive. What's that mean? Well, it means that if I'm a vocalist, I can use my microphone and the different frequencies like bass and mids and highs to drive different things within your experience. Palm trees can move, logos can appear, spaceship doors can open. These are just different examples. And our initial use case was very much focused on live streaming. So helping those people who were streaming on YouTube and Twitch compete with those that were, that had the budgets to do these crazy activations. But our North Star was always, being a camp of musicians. Everyone in the company has some degree of a music background. We love live. We don't think digital can replicate live, at least for another 20, 30 years. So our North Star was always, and our interest was always around, how do you link local physical audiences that are present in venue with global digital audiences simultaneously? And that is our idea of the metaverse, which is not some black box, separate kind of entity where avatars are bouncing into walls and then running off each other, but it's some integrated system. And that's kind of where we've been pushing on. So, you know, a lot of what we've done in Volta to date has been hybrid events, both physical and digital simultaneously. You know, the artists can choose where they broadcast the experience. Like I said, can be live in venue, can be live streamed, can be both, can be to any channel really. It takes a stream key. And in that effect, we help artists magnify reach. We bring in global audiences to help with audience interaction that I'm sure we'll cover on in a bit. And that's been the full circle. So yeah, we've done everything from Glastonbury Festival to Amnesia in Ibiza to the Brooklyn Mirage in New York, with artists like Imogen Heap, Bonobo, Jamie Jones, working closely as investors with Richie Houghton, Deadmau5, and Post Malone's Electric Feel. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
I just absolutely love that story. That's what fascinates me about, you know, going from racing driver, investment banker, economics, and then getting into, you know, it's this, you know, connecting with the right people, connecting with, you know, with the people at the right place at the right time. Although there were a few challenges, I think one of the things that stand out for me is that mindset ability to say, you know what, shit's just hit the fan. I might as well just make the best of it. You know, there's like everything could possibly go wrong has probably gone wrong.
Yeah.
Already. There's nothing I can do about it. And I think why I wanted you on the show was specifically for the audience's benefit is no matter where you are in your journey in terms of building that thing, you know, you've got a particular purpose you want to fulfill. What it looks like on the outside is not necessarily always what you initially envisioned. I mean, you started as, you know, in racing, and you ended up in investment banking and earning a good money, and then all of a sudden into startup, and then it's like it's all over the place. But all what that's done is it's created an accumulative amount of skills. And I'm just going to mention, I mean, for me, and my journey has been probably different to yours, but for me, it's always been that what I call the skillful pursuit, the pursuit of new skills. It's accumulating skills in the pursuit of a particular purpose, and you'll see that that's pretty much what I've created in terms of the website and the way that I'm running these podcasts and so on. I like to interview people where you know roughly what your purpose is, or you might be totally unaware of it, but it ends up coming out there. And I love that sort of trifecta of music, technology, gaming. I mean, I love that. And also taking advantage of the shift of all of a sudden rethinking the world, you know, rethinking the way we do things, that you don't have to be physically present. You can actually go and do a lot more. You can be live and go hybrid. You can be live in front of people, but also for people who can't make it. And not everyone's got the hybrid properly worked out. I mean, if I look at in the corporate space, but in music and in events and entertainment, that must be pretty challenging to get the people involved there, and your concept of live being sort of almost irreplaceable right now where we are. I agree with that. I mean, for me, it's live is authentic. It's real. It's happening now, and it's, you know, whatever comes along with it is where your emotions and then all that comes to the fore. So I'm loving the concept of saying, look, live is live. We're still human beings. We still appreciate that, but we can use the technology to reach more people. I mean, I'm getting a lot of really good stuff out of what you've mentioned. Tell us where you're going now. What's the plan? What are you doing right now, and sort of where do you see this, your sort of your product and Volta, and where it's going right now?
So I guess there's two things within that. One which is to your earlier point around live being live and kind of that being a centerpiece, and just as a point of interest, and again around your earlier point of an amalgamation of different skills and learnings and how things, what you set out to do is rarely actually where you end up, and it's always about the journey. But we actually started off as a VR first tool. The first incarnation of Volta actually was a desktop application where a creator would make their experience, but the endpoint would be consumed in virtual reality because that seemed like a very compelling medium. But what we found out very quickly was that it actually alienated users. People felt very alone in VR when they were going to these inherently social experiences. And the reason being was, you take a very social experience, like you just mentioned, a live concert. You put on a big kind of a headset that blocks out all your peripheral vision. It almost accentuates the actual experience such that you lose smell, haptic feedback, any kind of kinetic touch, and you see your friends represented as avatars. And that actually made people feel more alone than what we tried to do was make it more immersive. And we had that feedback consistently. So we pulled out of VR very quickly, twofold. One, because of that, trying to replicate the real world to our mind was nonsense, and it seemed very far away, until other sensory inputs had been included in technology. But B, we started very quickly to see that, despite sales of headsets kind of rapidly increasing in the beginning of lockdown, it plateaued pretty quick in terms of retention was actually pretty poor. And for us to be a mass market product, relying on VR was kind of a fool's errand to our mind. It's fantastic applications in B2B, but B2C, we're still a little bit mused. So that's kind of like addressing the past and a little bit around learnings and kind of what's actually shaping the future. Because whilst we kind of move more into 2D distribution endpoints like YouTube's, Twitch's, and actual screens live in venues, what's coming next and what we've already been prototyping, building, and have just won an Innovate grant to do it, which is a grant by the UK government to do this very thing, is we label as audience interaction. And ultimately what that means is that a fan who's experiencing or watching this content, this experience, whether they're live in venue or on the stream somewhere online, they can actually affect the fabric of what they're watching, not just for them, but for every single person, both in venue and live stream simultaneously. So how does that look? So for example, we've done this at the Brooklyn Mirage in New York, which to our minds is the largest LED screen in the world, at least in a music venue. It's about 200 feet wide by 50 feet tall. It's so powerful that it can't run on New York City's grid. It has their own huge generator system. And what we did there was so it's a huge LED wall that wraps around 180 degrees of the club, a 7,000 capacity venue, an open air venue. And, we rocked up with just a laptop and an iPhone, powered the entire experience, which is kind of our USP. You don't need any special hardware or stuff you don't have. It's using the equipment you already do, and that powered that whole screen. But where I'm going with this is, experience was streamed to Twitch simultaneously. So, you had 7,000 fans in person watching people like Nero and Deadmau5 and people like that. But the experience was streamed on Twitch. And we actually had investors on Twitch sitting in their homes in London that were controlling the walls of the Brooklyn Mirage simply by typing in keywords. So if you typed in the word Volta, this humongous tessellation effect came out across the screens. If you typed in Brooklyn, I believe the Brooklyn Mirage logo appeared in 3D and sort of bounced around. And that was a very early working prototype about 12 months ago. But since where we're taking it now is in the direction of, there is no limit to what is interactable. That's even a word. Interactive, rather, I guess. Within Volta, we've built like a music 3D game engine. So I could say, type in the word palm tree and a new palm tree appears. I could say, type in your name and your name appears in the virtual DJ booth in the stars. Or will you marry me? And will you marry me appears. Or webcam, my webcam turns on and then I could be dancing in my living room, but actually appearing on the billboards live in venue. And it's this way that we're creating an incentive structure. And what I should mention, is these interactions are paid for. Volta we don't tell artists or venues what to make interactive or how much to charge for them. It's all within the tool. They have pure discretion because they might want 1 or 2 things to happen based off audience control. They might want 100 things. It's down to the venue to decide or the artist to decide. We just offer kind of guidance there. We're not a service business, we're a product business. But yes, in that very vein, we've essentially created an incentive structure for fans to want to watch and experience live stream as opposed to just listen to it. And that therein lies the kind of, for us, the big opportunity here, because, music is known as an under-monetized market within the whole entertainment genre. It's the most consumed medium by a factor of 3. Yet compared to something like gaming, music only has a market cap of 30 billion, whereas gaming is something like 270 to 330 billion. And why? And we get asked this by investors, even our seed round, why aren't you going after gaming? And we go, exactly, there's an opportunity to grow the music market by using gaming mechanics. Now, what we specified as audience interaction is not too dissimilar from Fortnite's in-app payment model. It's a very similar thing. You pay for some sort of add-on, some sort of upgrade, you get it, everyone else in the experience sees it. And we are basically applying that mechanic to music and actually creating it such that the fans can get closer to their artists. And if they're not able to attend the experience, they're at least able to control it from their bedrooms of a wall in a huge venue or a club in Ibiza or, a classical concert, in a hall somewhere.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because I think you've taken and this is a podcast about marketing leadership and it's about product price, product market placement. It's about understanding your market, getting a deeper and richer and broader understanding of which market you're actually serving, but also serve or provide the market with the right kind of tool. What's very interesting, what you've just said now is you're creating more of a platform than a product or service. You're creating this space within which people can be creative and actually be able to reach their target markets at the same time. So you're an enabler, if you like, from a Volta point of view. You're creating something that could take what would be very difficult to distribute.
Yeah, exactly.
But now you're creating this ability to distribute to a much larger audience, which makes music or whatever the thing is you're broadcasting more accessible. And isn't that one of the core principles about marketing, is about expanding your market, expanding and giving the ability of your target audience to be able to experience your product or service the way. I mean, I just think you've got a lot of the makings of that sort of marketing leadership mentality, where you've taken the component parts that are sort of age-old principles that haven't changed really, but you've applied it in a completely new and modern way, and you're pretty much breaking ground in my view. I mean, I've looked around a bit, and there's nothing really similar to what you do. People try, but I think you're actually breaking brand new ground. So I don't know, am I right in that assumption?
We think so too. It's surprising. I've never been, I guess been a serial advisor and seen a lot of businesses in investment banking. I've never seen one that hasn't got a competitor, or at least a direct competitor. To our minds, we have regular market research, consumer research exercises. People have tried it. People got burned very quickly. We are seemingly, our traction is perpetual for some, and it amazes us. It worries us at the same time. We're very aware of first mover advantage not being an advantage. But interestingly, I guess we've had a lot of tailwinds our way. The concept of metaverse and 3D interactive has been touted about in the press. So we just have so much inbound demand that we can't really service our own growth. And to go back to what you were just saying there before, Dudley, in terms of around that kind of flywheel that you started to lean on, by helping artists monetize fans, our incentives are entirely aligned. So of course, our North Star is acquiring artists and artists at scale. So yeah, first principle, we're aligned with their incentives. And the other interesting thing is, if you look within music, there's something like 40 million people identified globally as a musician, but that isn't a humongous market. That isn't a mass market product. We are VC backed. We are looking to be a unicorn. That is the objectives that, our VCs bestow upon us in terms of portfolio management. And that in itself probably wouldn't tick the box. And I've modeled out what things could look like if you have a subscription of the whole market and things like that. But when you add in the dynamic of the average musician has something like 5,000 unique followers across their channels, then you start to get very, very sizable numbers. And it isn't that pie in the sky thing, because we've seen this already at Twitch over the pandemic, which was Tracy Chan, the head of music at Twitch, came out with a statement saying that in order to make $50,000 a year as a median income on Twitch, you only needed 183 concurrent viewers per stream. That was it. Now, of course, exactly. The point there is you don't need a massive audience. You just need a passionate one. And you need something that creates an incentive structure that wants those fans to participate in that experience. Now, these are all the camps of, quite sophisticated streamers that knew what they were kind of doing with these kind of prods. But the systems are there. The interest is there. Patreon has shown it, Fortnite has shown it. But the other thing I think might be interesting to share in this as well is, so on one hand, we haven't put a paywall in between us and the artist, right? We're not trying to make them subscribe. We don't think artists make enough money from their art, so why would we try and monetize them when actually we're going after the long tail of artists, probably from mid-tier and below to all the way through to bedroom performers. And the reason being is it's scaling. But how do we get there? I think there's another interesting one, which is, we haven't done any paid marketing yet in terms of outbound stuff. Our marketing strategy is through a BD lens. So we work, through our partner network to do these big flashy events. Now they are with big artists, and that there lies in the juxtapositioning of, we mention all these huge names, but actually we're going after the smaller names because that's where the market sizing is. But that's exactly the point. If we get to say we did deadmau5's show at this venue, and look, you can be deadmau5 too. Just download the software for free from the website. Go and monetize your fans, and Volta just sits in the middle as an enabler in this whole process. We have this very organic flywheel. That means it's very capital efficient. It doesn't have, and it's again this whole point I started with of, my prior businesses all had this locality element where you don't get these huge network effects and these kind of organic flywheels. So that's this very piece, as someone that's been very much at the forefront of marketing in my businesses, is what got me very excited to joining it and fleshing out that business model and marketing model. And it's great to see sort of 2.5 years later, it's actually proving to be fruitful, which is always even better, I guess, when you've got an idea and you put it in practice and it actually works.
Well, the market votes with its feet, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
the market votes by interaction and engagement. So the more engagement you get, and the more events and so on that you get to. I think that when I did speak to you, I don't know, a week or two ago, I think you had just come back from Ibiza, and I think, you tell us a bit about sort of your
just again.
yeah, and tell us. I mean, your life is all over. You pretty much, although you're having sort of a hybrid model, but you're pretty much going all over the place. Tell us a bit about sort of a day in the life of Mitchell. So tell us a bit sort of where you go, what you do, and how you actually go out and promoting this and speaking to people.
A difficult question to answer succinctly, I must say. It varies a lot, right? I guess just for the founder lens, a Monday typically tends to be very internal. I think that's across the board. Tuesdays through Thursdays are BD sort of days or internal catch-ups, and Fridays are sort of roundups or a kind of a little bit more actually executional focused work, because like I'm sure most in this call, days are filled up with meetings, and actually it's very hard to execute into the late hours. And our bigger problem is, we're geographically unbounded. Great, more opportunity, but downside is we work with LA, we work with Dubai. Time zones is a headache, to say the least. And then, when we look at events, there are sort of 3 criteria we assess an event on. Of course, one is, if they are going to be paying us. That isn't our model, but, we need to cover costs in terms of one of the founders flying over or someone marketing flying over. What is the cost, the budget they have? But that isn't so important. That's more covering cost bit. But it's the case of, will this be streamed, and will it be streamed to a large enough channel, and will they be doing all the interaction? So that first condition of stream to a large enough channel, that very much lies into our marketing sort of flywheel. If we get asked to do an event and it's low budget and it goes off a channel that has a small audience, well, then we know our upside is really the people in venue and maybe some people online. But if it's a performance that has a very large following online, that is usually where one of us will want to go, because it means actually that there's an opportunity where we have 10 million captive users just sitting there on a stream waiting for us to display content. So that's that's one of those criteria that we kind of look at and go, well, it's marketing for us. We're treating this entirely as a marketing event. And the interaction piece, that's because, of course, it's the forefront of our minds. It's where we think the future is going. So if a venue or an event is up for doing that, that's where we'll engage. So lofty answer. I mean, it really, really depends. And, to kind of, I guess, add in some of that madness in terms of travel and things being a little bit hectic. I'm off to New York on Friday for 3 months, but and that's just a relocation mainly for work, because a lot of our investors and clients are over in the States. But within that 12-week period, I'm already traveling for 6 of it. So I'm kind of wondering, what's the point of even going to New York? That's various trips across the different states, but then back to ADE, Amsterdam Dance Event in October in Amsterdam, then back to London, then back to LA, then back to New York. So it's all a little hectic. And the crazy thing is we do everything we try and do to minimize travel. It's kind of a piece within our brand mission and our mission statement, which is, we don't want to do unnecessary flights. The days of getting on a flight to see one meeting or one person feels to us as a little bit a day of the past. But these, genuinely, when we get asked to do something, before we know it, it becomes a 10 event series, where, like, for example, at Art Basel in Miami, we were asked, do you guys want to do something, an installation for Art Basel? Okay, maybe let's kind of think about it. And then within the last 2 weeks, we've got another 6 or 7 kind of partners who are interested in doing something at Art Basel. And that's where we then go, okay, well, this is worth our time, because it's not just one thing. There's 7 events all lined up back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Let's fly someone over. Same for AD in Amsterdam. There's 10 or 12 events coming in the same week. So that one we've had to bring in a few developers and a few extra ground staff. So there's sort of 6 of us going, which is how we ran Glastonbury, for example. When it's that level of high profileness and that intense, yeah, you do need a few more members of staff. And that's, again, we're not an event-based company, right? It's just, we have to put that human capital on events to drive that online acquisition piece. And it works out being far more effective for us.
Yeah. And what's very interesting about what you're saying is that it always seems theoretically possible to run sort of a remote type of business, but it tends to come back to the key relationships are built often face to face or on site or with the people that you need to, because once you've made that connection, and I used to say, once you've broken bread with somebody, you've actually sat down and had a meal or a coffee or a pint or a something, you more closely connected. So when you do meet online, you're much more open to I don't know, doing business and building a further relationship. But there is a good mix. Again, it comes back to your model right now, which is hybrid. Some people like in-person experiences. Others can't make it for various reasons. And it also makes events, for instance, more accessible to a much bigger market. But there are still certain principles, again, involved, where being on site, there's almost sometimes no replacement for it. But you also try and be as efficient as possible with your time. And I think from a founder and from a startup growing and also trying to scale the business now, that whole thing about time becomes probably the biggest difficulty. Is the planning of the week, is the planning of the day, is where do you spend your time? And if you're not if it's a low value activity, bring someone in. Who else do you bring in? You got to bring new people. You can maybe systemize it to a point, but now you're starting to bring more people in. All of a sudden you've got a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 employee company. And then when you look again, you're 100, and you look again, you're a few hundred. And it's like, geez, what just happened? Yeah. So tell us a bit, sort of, where are you right now in that sort of journey in trying to formulate? Have you sort of got your team together? Are you in place yet to do that next sort of level up? I mean, with your background in terms of investment banking, and I look at some of the transactions that you've seen this at a big scale. You've seen this at a large scale with investment banking and so on, and working with various clients. You've seen people do this, and you've obviously seen the mistakes people have made.
Yeah.
Although the technology and all that's different, a lot of the business principles stay the same. So tell us a little bit about what's the space that you're in at the moment? Are you still start up, finding your feet? Are you more at scale up? Are you ready to take it onto a new level? Or and I know you're still working out the actual product as well as you go, developing the product as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess your first question in terms of time, just to kind of make a funny point, but just, being about ruthless about time. For example, yesterday I left Ibiza last week for another event that was part of like a 3-part event series at Amnesia, which was the largest super club in the world up until I think about 10 years ago. But anyway, we had to fly over to Bordeaux because a best friend's wedding was over there. And, even when I left Bordeaux airport on a Saturday, I had 3 calls from the car because I knew I'd be driving from the airport. I flew back yesterday. On the way to the airport, I had 3 calls. On the flight, I wrote all my emails because I use Superhuman, which has offline mode. Got off the flight, had another 3 calls driving back to where I am actually now. So apologies if there's any kind of embarrassing stuff in the particular room I'm in. I'm in my family home because a lot of my stuff that I need to pack for New York has been here because, yes, space is a privilege in London where I live, and my other things and stuff I can't fit in my apartment are here at my family home, which is outside of London. So yeah, apologies if there's any sort of weird ornaments behind me. But yeah, in terms of kind of staging, yeah, you're spot on. I sort of seen, I guess, mid tiers growing to being ultra large caps in the investment banking space. I've seen early stage a handful of times now across, Volta, Nez, and a couple of other businesses I advise. Company I consulted for 2 years is Olio, which is all around stopping food waste at its source. And I joined them at Series A and saw them get to C. So yeah, I've seen so many different stages of companies, and I've seen that whole kind of cycle mature from literally employee 0 all the way through to employee 100,000. And I find that being one of the most interesting things of a company once you've got it right, because once you've got things right and you're scaling up, it becomes very executional focused. But what I really enjoy within that executional lens is, and that's often when you hire hired guns that have a brief that kind of follow a blueprint and will get on and go with it. But I really enjoy the dynamics of company scaling, and the kind of how important it is to get things like culture and systems in place from the earliest stages, because once you scale, those things become very sticky. And it can even be simple tools. Like, to give an example, I mean, I'm going a little bit off piece here, but I'm not going to mention the company's name because I don't maybe want to slander, but it's a simple chat bot company that power, I know quite a few people in the space. And it's simple for live chat, for customer support tickets. And we built that into our core architecture in my last business because it was great for when customers had issues, a bit like how in Deliveroo or in Uber Eats, you have an issue with your order, you come in, you customer service. And that cost scaled to being our most expensive cost by a factor of 10 once we hit about 100,000 monthly active users. You can only imagine how our knees were shaking when we got to 300K MAU. But the problem was any estimation we got from our CTO or developer of how much time it would take to remove this was in the order of magnitude of something like 2 years of actual subscription costs to this platform. So we were literally like, right, so we can either spend 3 months and this much money with all our development team just getting rid of something that costs us an exorbitant amount, but that's at the expense of growing the business. So yeah, I've even seen that weird dynamic play out with SaaS products and it's not scaling particularly well. So you take those learnings and look at not just from a people basis, but also a tooling basis, and what really is going to set you up in the long run to be the right system, so you don't have these expensive integration efforts. Where are we now? We are employee number 14 with 8 contractors. We've just hired another 2. We have another 2 positions available in the market. That takes up to 18. And then the beginning of next year, we're probably going to bring on another 3. And to be honest, all of this is ahead of expectations. We thought we were done in about April. We closed our seed round, went on a hiring spree and added sort of 5 or 6 more people. But have had, so much positive traction, I guess, since. That's been a great signal for us to go faster. We won an Innovate grant for $500,000, which helped. But we also have had a number of investors come and join the Volta journey off cycle without actually a formalized round. So Andreas and Horowitz, for example, joined 2 weeks ago, which is a personal, huge pinch me moment.
Nice.
Following their work and their king-making activities for many a year.
Nice.
And a couple of other names I can't mention just yet. But, we've been extending runway. So ultimately that gives us the signals, okay, there's no point going, it's not no point, but if the tide is in our favor, let's move faster and still being mindful of runway, concerns. But at the moment, we will be looking up to about summer 2024, which for a startup of our size is a little bit ludicrous. And my kind of COO growth hack kicks in going, well, let's at least champ for 6 months off that and move a bit faster when we look at this plethora of opportunities that we're turning down. So the terminology, sorry, long story, long answer to a short question. Where are we? I wouldn't quite say startup, and I wouldn't quite say scale up. For me, scale up is repeatable. It's more Series A, B type activities where you know what you're doing, you're rinsing and repeating, and you're just growing. But we're not quite a startup because we know what we're doing and we know what our traction is. We're sort of somewhere in the middle because actually I guess our biggest problem, which is a champagne problem, but it is a real problem, is we need to crack down on a specific market segmentation and hammer that market rather than being a bit too broad. The problem with Volta is what we didn't realize when we built it was targeting music and adding in that visual performance layer on the surface seemed quite targeted and poignant, but actually, just to give you a spitballing of market segmentation now, you've got people that identify with being DJs, producers, vocalists, outright kind of musicians in terms of just playing, an instrument. I say just, but just focusing on an instrument. So that's the kind of 4 different styles of people. But then within those people, you have different genres of hip hop, electronic, dance, metal, so on and so forth. You've also then got the dynamic of how big is that musician? Because if they have 100 followers, there's a very different dynamic and a very different approach to if they have 10 million or 100 million followers. So there's so many different styles and flavors of these individuals in this space. It's fragmented in our approach, and that's why music, again, has been quite a difficult market. Now, our tool is being used by all those different folks and different segments, but it is an inefficient method of us going to deploy capital by just we're going after music, because that is very pipe dreamy. Like and we're also systemically now trying to identify who and why we go after first, as opposed to this other audience that we're seeing traction with. And just to throw one other example out there, what we do as a business and where our product is optimized for is for that hybrid sort of spectrum. So within venue and live stream, but we have people using us to make music videos. We didn't ever expect, you send out a tool into the wild and it's designed for one thing, and people come back sending us, stuff in Discord, emails like, oh, I did a real cool EP for my new music video, my new track. We're like, oh wow, okay, that's really interesting. We didn't build it for that, but
it almost becomes open source to a certain extent, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we're like, okay, well, that's great. Why did you do that? They're like, well, it takes me, it costs like 20-30 grand to make a music video, and like 8 or 12 weeks. I used your tool. It took me about a couple of hours. I did it for my bedroom. It looks awesome. And we're like, okay, right. We'll think about monetizing that at another time. Like, great, okay, awesome. Because we're even thinking like, oh yeah, crap, people can record stuff from it and put it in places and use it and stuff. Okay, we need to think through that. But that's here lies in the problem. So not quite startup because we know we're getting traction, not quite scale up because we are, we're not yet in that fully repeatable camp. But I think we're somehow been punching above our weight. And I put a lot of praise and merit onto just how much our network is, and our network is genuinely insane. Techstars obviously helped a lot of that, but I think being in the right place, the right time helped a lot. And we haven't had to do any outbound stuff, for example, at all. Yeah.
If you think about, even if you think about the Facebook story, Zuckerberg and his story, to a certain extent, he created a platform, and people just, and then he started monetizing it and so on. Just as a very broad brush, not that you like a Facebook. All I'm saying is he hit it at the right place at the right time, because the technology was available at the time, and they were busy developing it even more so, and then became the market leader and pretty much owns that space. But now you've got the TikToks of the world, and they're now taking over, and that's become a different platform, but that's now been for a different type of market again, and they've narrowed it down to shorts, etc. I see YouTube is trying to do shorts, but I'm just thinking about, so that point you made about what is your real market, because there's so many different applications that you can actually go after. It's at some stage you got to make a decision. You got to decide, and I suppose that's going to be the pivotal moment of where you say this is who we are, as opposed to everything else that we can be. I suppose that's the difficulty when you are a startup moving into sort of growth. And the other difficulty you're going to have is, as you bring new people in, new people come with new ideas and new personalities and new dynamic and a new culture. And you end up having to repeat yourself in terms of what your vision is and so on and so forth. And then it becomes, how do I make this a standard issue? Like a standard, like an army issue, like this is your uniform. These are the parameters within which we operate. It's like, you can't just go off and do something else. It's, at 18 or 20, 25, 30 people, it's okay. get to 100, I think you've seen it, get to a few hundred, then you've got to have different layers of how do you build out the systems and processes, and how do you make sure the messaging that you're getting across all the people that are joining, especially many people joining at the same time. One person here, another one there, 3 there, whatever it is. Every time you're changing the dynamic of your organization, and you end up having to repeat that onboarding process again and again. But even getting your onboarding of new staff right is also a big job. That's not even just systemizing your business or even just finding a target market. I mean, there's so many things you've got to still do, which makes it fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I think it's a brilliant journey that you're on.
It's definitely a journey. You called out some of the definitely some pain points in terms of shared visions and kind of onboarding stuff. And look, we made it. I guess we're categorized as a deep tech business. We've got a lot of gaming funds and VCs that are on board in the journey, but a lot of them are sort of deep tech investors too. And that affords us a little bit more luxury in terms of time, where we can be more thoughtful and actually diligent and intentional around some of the decisions we take, as opposed to, some businesses that are VC backed do have revenue pressures and GP projections and stuff like that. We are afforded a little bit more space because I think our investors look at this as such a humongous opportunity that being more intentional is probably worth it at the expense of expediency. That's not to say we're not moving fast, but that kind of what I've seen from different businesses. But in the context of employee management, one of the things that we were very, very keen on setting when we first started the business was this culture of challenging one another, not in an aggressive manner, but more in a case of we were acutely aware that we're building in an industry called mixed reality, hadn't really been defined. It's a small industry in terms of the people that are within it, the actual available talent. And we were very worried about being in our own echo chamber, with our ideas and what do we think is going to happen, how's the world going to look like, and so on and so forth. So we created a culture of anyone, no matter their seniority, being praised to actually challenge the norm. Like, okay, guys, like Mitch said this, but actually, do we really think that? Or what about this idea? So it creates and fosters this dynamic of not challenging for the sake of challenging, but almost intellectual curiosity and seeking evidence-based answers and moving from the realms of subjectivity. Now that's great because it means that everyone in the company feels very passionate about what they do. We've never had someone resign, neither we had to ever fire anyone in the 3 years of trading. We've never even had an offer declined when we've offered someone. But it's this dynamic of everyone's contributing by actually being a part of the conversation. Of course, that's a woolier statement. Of course, it is still siloed to product or marketing or sales or whatever. And sometimes you get crossovers, and we try and cross over and have cross-functional teams, but blah, 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 blah. But yes, that very nature of challenging things and being intentional and thoughtful obviously is an issue, is obviously one of the reasons why we are here now. We're getting traction, we're scaling very fast, but we're still not entirely clear on where we're pushing it, because unifying that set of ideas and unifying people's visions, until there is a weight and dearth of evidence, it's still, we're no longer subjective. We're like on the way to objective, but it's a new market, it's a nascent market, and we're applying something that we need to teach the market how to actually understand what it is. And yes, the more broad we are in that the way we communicate about ourselves, the less helpful it is. So yeah, we're desperate to pinpoint on, we work with this market on this genre and they do this thing, and then we can describe ourselves, because even our website language, we've had to be more broad stroke whilst we figure out. And there's a plethora of exercises we're doing to figure it out and figuring out as quickly as possible. But those things aren't a 1 week answer. And they could be a costly optimization exercise if you get it wrong.
And it's probably going to change as you think you've got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Look, we're nearing the end of the hour, and it's been Mitch, has been so fascinating having a chat to you about something that's completely different to anything I've spoken about within my podcast audience. But I think what's evident to me, the same principles, same business principles, marketing and other principles apply. Also making sure that you also know where you are in your sort of in that journey of growth, from start through, to be honest with yourself in terms of, this is where we're at. We're not perfect. I think just that in itself, it says a lot. And for me, a lot of people, when they're in that startup space, you could end up running off into a delusional space where you thinking something is what then it's not. And what's really nice about the way you come across is that from an authentic point of view, you're actually thinking it through. You're saying, look, we're not perfect. There are things we can fix, and probably a lot more things we don't even know that we should be fixing, but or making changes. And even, things like the software you mentioned, what choices do you make? And if someone sort of is watching this episode and they're thinking about starting up a business, or they're in a startup phase, you are going to make mistakes that you're going to pay for along the way. You're not going to get everything perfect. And at some stages, you're going to have to make decisions that are a little painful, but you need to just carry on, and you need to understand which one in your own mind, which one is more important than the other. So, I mean, I think you're doing it absolutely perfectly. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I want maybe just, as we round off, I want to just ask you, so out of all the things that you've done, because you've got, if I look at your LinkedIn profile, I mean, you've got complex negotiations, executed over 30 billion pounds in trades, raised 20 billion pounds in capital for government, institutional, and large cap multinational clients. I mean, at that top end, down to this end, where, I mean, and there's a whole lot of other things. So if you could sort of pinpoint 1, 2, or 3 sort of things like takeaways, like golden nuggets, for the audience, so what would they be? I mean, do you have any sort of top of mind?
In what capacity? Because obviously, in terms of
in your experience, like you've gone racing driver, you've gone economics, you've gone investment banker, you've gone startups, you've gone, what has been something that you could sort of say, okay, well, that is a little something I can share. I mean, I know it's probably a bit of a
career focus. You mean more sort of personally, like life and career?
Yeah. What are your takeaways, if you like, out of where you are right now?
I mean, certainly, wherever you start is probably not where you're going to end up. I think I could probably demonstrate that pretty quickly. And that's kind of from a very past, but I think really to drill in, and it's a little bit around imposter syndrome. So, for example, people starting out in the career, I would always say start off at a large cap, or somewhere where you're going to get that very regimented learning and kind of pressure cooker type of environment. Because if you start in a startup or SME or something, you're not going to probably go to a corporate when you're later in life. To kind of, the incentives just usually tend not to quite be there. But leaving investment banking was very daunting, because I kind of thought, I'm a derivatives financial engineer. I have a specialism in modeling. I work in between M&A, IPOs, and the markets. Who the hell is going to want me doing anything else? And started fleshing out this startup idea. And this is a big one actually to kind of throw out there now I think about it. But going from a very cushy salary at one of the world's biggest investment banks in a team that was number 1 in the world to 0 was painful. And I thought, what skill set am I going to have that's going to be helpful in this journey? So I doubted myself massively. There was 2 of my best friends I went to school with that was sort of courting me and kind of pushing me and nudging me in that direction. But long story short, for 18 months, I didn't make a penny of salary at my first startup. That was a choice, admittedly. Well, maybe not so much of a choice. We didn't have much money when we only raised 100 grand to start with. And, that went all into the product and hiring devs and stuff. So, where I'm going with this was I was happier every day for those 18 months than I was in IB. And that's not kind of to slander the IB sector. I actually really enjoyed it. I learned a ton, but I was building something I was interested in. I felt like my learning had plateaued in IB, and that was always something of real interest to me, especially when I was younger, which is always feel like you're learning something, that you're adding something to your toolkit, and that you feel like you're a better person tomorrow than you were today. I kind of plateaued a little bit in IB because, nothing again with IB, but it's very executional focused. When you're doing these massive deals, there are you and 100 people working on them. You're specialized in a certain piece, and there's only so many deals that are genuinely unique before they all merge into being the same thing. But a startup every day felt exciting and new, and I was trying new challenges. So, those 18 months making 0 sure, I was hustling. I was burning my savings. I was renting my room out on Airbnb and staying my parents home a week a month. I was renting my car out on whatever car rental website would take me. I'd rent my car parking space out, and I'd even look after dogs. And like, there's a website called Tailstow where I'd look after people's dogs when they were on holiday. Like, any way to passively generate income to allow myself to live this crazy journey I was doing. But I was still happier doing that than I was a day in IB, because it was something I chose to do. And then second of all, never discount a single skill you learn in life. Like, I discounted derivatives, financial engineering, and this and that. And sure, those hard skills I learned in banking, yeah, they've been somewhat useful, especially now with Web3. They've kind of come full circle. And now we're looking at, okay, well, how does fiat currency and crypto and tokens work? And, I can make another example, but I'll ramble. But yeah, that financial plumbing has really helped me understand how we could apply Web3 thinking, or do apply Web3 thinking to Volta. But, the soft skills, no one really talks about the soft skills so much. Being a 21-year-old all the way through to 25, younger into internships, but then, sitting down in a boardroom with CEOs of the biggest companies on earth and commanding that, you don't really acknowledge that at the time. But when you then go to a startup and, you're then facing SMEs or smaller enterprises, and, you can not own any conversation, that sounds horrible, but you can present yourself in a manner and actually deliver what you need to say in a way that's done well. That's a massive skill set that I didn't quite appreciate. Being able to network and walking into a conference and actually finding it normal to go and talk to people. Like, I can get tremendous amounts of social anxiety sometimes, and I actually have to kind of look back to IB and go, what did I do there when my boss was saying, you will bloody go and do this now? And like, forced into that, I got forced into doing it. So sometimes my older me comes back and the social anxious come back, and I just go, what have I done as IB? So yeah, I guess two big ones: don't ever discount a single learning, ever. And I guess money doesn't, at least personally, it really doesn't buy happiness. And I've never, ever optimized my life ever since around anything that's monetary.
I love it. No, that's been absolutely brilliant. Mitch, how can people get a hold of you? I mean, as we come to the end, I mean, tell us sort of how can they get a hold of you if they're interested in Volta or chatting to you or anything like that? What is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
To be honest, I'd like to say this isn't the best way, but it actually really is. LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm a COO. I'm a networker and a partnerships guy. So yeah, please come and find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out. It's Mitchell Goldman, slightly shorter than I think we have as Mitchell Bayer Goldman here, my double-barreled. It doesn't roll off the tongue so well. But yeah, come and find me on LinkedIn. Emails, my inbox just gets a bit crazy, and I've got so many different things, and I wouldn't want an email to get lost.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you. We've come to the end. Any last words? Any final words you want to share?
Difficult. Well, we're on the clock, and I can see where it's ticking to. Apart from, look, thank you so much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed the session, and it's been awesome coming on the show, having seen a number of them prior. I hope this is relevant and helpful for the audience. And honestly, if there's any questions anyone has, do reach out on LinkedIn. I am active on LinkedIn. I only believe I've got to somewhere where I feel happy in life because other people have helped me. Volta nearly didn't get through a seed round about a year and a half ago, and other founders went out their way to make investor introductions and to advise and all sorts. And I look at that experience and many other experiences in life where I know we're all a function of asking people favors and helping one another. And I really, really, truly believe that and mean it. And I spend a lot of my time helping just with intros to people, because it's like, look, if you just had these 5 intros that I got given a year ago, that's enough for you to go and get 3 months of this or X number of sales of that. It's so much can be happen through a simple introduction. But I've benefited so massively from them for all my life. So yeah, I really, whether it's asking me for an intro or going out there and kind of going, do you know what? It's not a failure to go and ask someone for a hand or for help. One of those two rhetorics kind of works pretty well for me.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much, Mitch. Thank you. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience. Hold on for me for a second. I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on our podcast, Fractional CMO, the Marketing Leadership podcast, where we talk to what I believe. I mean, Mitch is probably a great example of a marketing leader. He probably hasn't considered himself that in that sort of way, but from our point of view, if I look at the journey he's been on, and even the different experiences, I mean, some of those takeaways of making your own choices, making your own decisions, following through, doing what it takes, making sure that you start understanding the dynamics of the business, etc., and also then applying the principles and the things that are, I would say, built into us as human beings, but applying it in a different way. And I think this is such an exciting technology and a way, further way, I think, that makes the world probably more connected, more global, and gives people the ability to share their skills and talents via a platform like Volta. But I think the crux of it is really Mitch showing that endurance, even doing the dog walking and all that type of thing, to see his way through, and also then making sure that he's connected with the right people and just keeping at it and keeping focused, understanding that there are challenges along the way, but not being thrown off course, and every time taking the opportunity when he was given it. Thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully that was inspirational as it was for me. Hope you can join us on our next podcast of the Fractional CMO, the Marketing Leadership Podcast. All the best. Have a fantastic day, and we'll chat to you soon. Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is Dudley again. And if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. That's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.